measured, you've got to be diplomatic, all that sort of stuff, but overall, we're a bit too timid. We're afraid of lancing a boil publicly, and I honestly don't know why. Because when you've done the work, when you know what the arguments to and fro are, when you've done the listening, you shouldn't be worried about lancing a boil.
We really have to go as a society. I reckon we've handed over accountability, the authority and responsibility for directing our future. We as a community have handed that to government, whether it be local, state or federal. We've handed it by a design or accident. Sign off. I reckon it's more by accident. And government has become a business entirely divorced from community. And if our challenge is to bring community back into government, I think we've got to recognise that. We can't survive independent of. We've got to make some brave decisions and go, guys like this will do it well. Got to get out there and we talk about this lack of leadership or lack of brave leadership, this lack of people who've got some intestinal fortitude and they've got some enormous conviction, some value.
It's very complex. I actually don't know many. I don't think I know any bad politicians. They're actually decent people. It is a systemic issue, I find, anyway. And it's interesting. I used this stat a lot a couple of years ago, but how many prime ministers do you have to go back before the last one left on their own terms? I can tell you it's 10. It's menzies. Every prime minister this country's had since the 60s has been turfed out. Either lost an election or been shafted by their party or whatever.
Driven by ego.
Sorry?
They're driven by ego.
Well, yeah, that's the other interesting thing in that we're so anxious to hang on to our position. You spend a whole lifetime trying to become the CEO or the Prime Minister or the Mayor or whatever. You get there, and rather than, and I'm going to make a gross overgeneralisation, but I'll make it anyway, and rather than just give your full attention to doing the job, you're looking behind, and you're protecting your own position, and that is a worrying phenomenon, I have to say. That is a worrying. I see a lot of it in business. I'm less expert in politics, but I see a lot of people who are simply taking the safe way ahead because personally it's the best option to stay in their own position. And I'm sad about that because Australian business in particular, this is perhaps something that I did want to mention before we close up, is not only timid in terms of its leadership, but we are very slow, or in world terms, slow on the technology uptake as well. We don't spend that much on R&D. I have to say this because I'm Cyro, but we really do underinvest. Now, I don't expect SMEs to invest a whole lot in R&D. It's not their role, but I do expect big business to invest in R&D.
Research and development. Research and development,
sorry. We don't do it in this country. And I think it's part of that timidity. It's part of the, well, gosh, you give money to a whole lot of pointy heads in white lab coats. What do you get for it? And again, it's a question that's actually easily answered. You actually get a lot for it, but you've got to have the courage to invest.
There's this thing in Japan, the Russian Nagasaki. That's pretty shocked to bring about change, economic change. And I think only until we get that, we have lived in the land for so long. We're on Conway's land of the long weekend. We haven't had a civil war internally and all that. We've lived in the moment. And I think that if I hear what you're saying, you're just saying, you've got to make the transition now, and it's fundamental, whatever the fundamentals are.
What I would say, look, I actually during 2011 said I don't think Australia's the lucky country. I think it's the luckiest country. And I had a few reasons for saying it. I think it's an extraordinary place. How many people travel overseas, you come back here, and do you feel good about coming back? I don't know, I feel euphoric about coming back. It's just an amazing place. I honestly think, though, that the developing world is the emerging giant. It really is. You've all seen the transfer of power from the west to the east. I'm really lucky at Macquarie, we're an investment bank, and we saw this, I didn't see it, our economists saw it 25 years ago. Why? Because unlike our competitors in Wall Street and London and what have you, we're in that time zone. And our people got onto this Asian wave actually earlier than many other people. I'm lucky because I had to read their stuff. What we got wrong, what I got wrong, was the extraordinary rapidity with which it's happening. Like, I thought I would die, from 80 or 90, 100, and it would be work in progress. It'd still be America out #1, daylight. Let me tell you, China will have a bigger economy than America within 8 years. It's extraordinary. And as I said, the time scale is just extraordinarily short. That's really good and really challenging for Australia because, sure, at the moment we have stuff in the ground that the developing world wants. Yeah, we're in a really good position. But let me tell you, there's a lot of the developing world that's actually just like us. What's the most mineralogically rich continent on Earth?
Yes, it's Africa.
It's Africa. It's not Australia. The reason that we're doing so well is we've got settled government and there's only 20 million of us. It's pretty straightforward to get stuff done, etc., etc. In 50 years' time, perhaps even half that time frame, much more of the activity will be happening in Africa because that's where the stuff is. And all I'm saying is that just about everything we do, I think it's going to be more competitive. There's only, I believe, one major solution to that or antidote, and that's education. We've got to invest in our minds. Young people like Zach and old people as well. Right across the day, we're all living older. Average life expectancy of a baby girl born this morning in one of Melbourne's hospitals, better hospitals, 103 and 8 months. We're breeding a species of Dame Elizabeth Murdochs. And our useful lives are not going to be, say, between 20 and 55 or 60 anymore. It's going to be between 20 and 80. You can't tell me that people want to spend 50 years in a retirement home. We're all active, medical professions make their bodies better, our minds better, etc. And there's going to be all sorts of potential to keep improving, keeping ourselves up to date. But it will require a rejuvenated whole-of-life education system. That's Australia's hope.
Can I just ask, sorry, what's your name? Roger. Roger was just telling me before that their biggest industry here is the wine industry.
Right.
So do you have a shortage of people to work in the industry, just to pick the grapes and plant the vines?
There used to be young people in the industry here. As far as the development area, it's just people who just put their heads together and decide they go for it.
Yeah, but is there a high, do you have to bring people in? Like, do you have to attract backpackers to something?
Well, they're not bringing backpackers in. They've got enough people.
Have they?
There's a number of retired people waiting on our people.
Oh, wow.
They're actually working quite a few people.
Yeah.
We travel a bit.
Yeah.
It
is boutique wines.
And a number of people from the age of 65 to 75 working in the field of picking grapes, tomatoes, just name it. Right through that to mature.
Yeah.
They find out that's all right. But also there are big companies. You bring people from overseas.
Oh, they do.
And I've got a friend that's up in Darwin, he means you're in about 45 people. They're quite reliable, you can't get up and down, you can't get strangers, it's going to be reliable.
Yeah. People are flown in to work.
Going back to what you were saying about the education-wise, people not working in the community, I think it's, when we were young, we were taught to work in the community, to help people in the community. And that was taught through the schools. I believe a lot of this is not taught through the schools. I remember when I first
200 miles to a meeting at night and come back and go, well, I've got to work. And they're saying, people say now, well, I can't afford the time to go and work for Rotary Lions or what have you. And I said, that's silly. But so I've got children bring up. I said, yes. I said, going back a number of years, I said, I had two children. We travelled. I was on the roll. I said, a lot of people turn work on Saturday and turn in and done sheep manure and all this sort of stuff. And I think one of the things that we've got today is that we've got really greedy ourselves, and we expect, and as long as we've got a very high unemployment, then people look at you, they expect, they look at us that we owe them something. And I think that's something we've really got to change, and that's going to take a long while. As long as we've got high unemployment, we'll have this, and they expect people to turn and do things for them. They will not go out and try and help themselves. Yeah. And that's a big problem.
I agree with you. I guess what I tried to say was I think it's two-way in that somehow we also just need to work better at making it a rewarding experience when we join. I think, I've heard so many old people that say, forgive me if I'm offending anyone, the young people don't have the right spirit or they don't volunteer. Well, actually, that's not right. I don't see any different spirit at all. It's just that firstly they do it their own way, and secondly they're not doing it the traditional way.
Well, I think the thing a lot of it is the older people are not really encouraging the younger generation to turn and do things.
I think that's right. My father was a Rotarian, and what was the phrase? It was something about service. There was an emphasis on service to the community. And, we're not in an era anymore where the reason you're involved in such an institution is to be of service to the community. I'll put it this way, that's not the only catchline. It should be fulfilling for us as individuals, and I think that's what needs to be emphasised. I do spend a bit of time with CEOs of our large charitable organisations, and I can tell you that they're very focused on how do we, whether you're a money donor or a volunteer or whatever, how do you make somehow the right environment so that they will come back because they feel good about it, as opposed to just being, doing it out of duty. I don't have a problem with that. I think it just requires new thinking. That's all.
Because the older generation got a lot to turn and to the younger generation, and they should turn and work with them. Because one of my greatest things is I love working with the younger generation, and I learn something from the younger generation. And I think you've got to be open-minded. There's a lot of people who turn 60, 65 and say, well, that's it, I've done my time. And they don't really encourage them. And even if they do work with them, they still don't learn anything. They're not prepared to listen. I think the older generation, I'm 73 and I've seen some big changes in this world. And some probably for the better, some are not for the best, most of them are for the better things. And I think no matter what age you are, you should be able to learn something from it. And I enjoy learning. I mean, we've gone right now to computers and iPods and all this sort of stuff. I mean, I'm way behind a lot of that stuff, but I enjoy listening to the younger generation talking about it and showing me, yes. I'm not going to see it out there. I'll have another go later on. But it's there, and I think that's something we all should be encouraged.
Isn't that one of the vehicles, one of the systems and processes? You look at these things. Dynamic change, the exponential change that they've made. Young people are caught in Victoria. This guy's it gets an engagement system, it's an engagement process. And us oldies, I think we sort of missed the opportunity. We missed it big time.
Absolutely. Heather knows. Let me give you an example. I sit on a board of a young people's organisation. It's extraordinary. A guy called Hugh Evans, who was a young Australian here 10 years ago, he created an organisation called the Oak Tree Foundation and is now based overseas in New York, and he's created something called the Global Poverty Project. And selfishly, I'm involved in that. Why? Because I can't think of another organisation which tells me how to connect with 25 and 30-year-olds better than that organisation. So I'm very honest. I mean, I love the people and the cause is very important, etc. But I'm involved in that for a partly selfish reason, so that I can be wide into a little bit of what you're talking about.
And we got to see Neil Young in New York.
And we're going to see
Concert.
yeah, but,
He's an Aussie like you. Us.
I don't think there's probably ever been a time where young people are informing older people more than today.
Well, it's in the governments, aren't they? You look at the Egypt.
That's right.
That's right. It's very powerful. Social media can change a government. Has that much power. But how do you sustain your young people in this community? Are they having to really leave to get on to go into their future? That would be the problem, wouldn't it? Yeah.
One of them's had to actually go out of the country to get work.
Yeah. That would be your problem. And just looking around to you, the age and the ethnicity as well. So you don't really have a very diverse ethnicity here. Is that's the other issue you've got here?
I'd love to hear from 4 kids here, but cool kids, but yeah, just what you think about the whole thing. Us old parts have been going on here for a while, being away, so what you guys got to say? I'd love to hear that. Oh, because you're going to be our next leaders. You're going to be the...
If they stay.
At the moment, I'm studying civil engineering at Deakin, and what is probably most likely to happen will be that there won't be, there's no real work around in Geelong, so I'll have to go to Melbourne, to the big city, to get a job sort of thing.
Yep.
It's very common, isn't it, in country towns? And can you see yourself doing something in the form of social engineering to attract different ethnicities here, minority groups who are just settling into the country, to stimulate your local economy and through just the networks that you already have in place, like the schools?
I teach kindergarten in town, and we are starting to get a few more different cultures into the kindergarten.
Yeah.
But we didn't have.
That's
10
one
years
way
ago when I started there.
to sustain and to grow, having your families. And you're talking about people just staying at home and being too busy. Well, actually, the children are going to school, and that is a community in itself. And that tends to help nurture that diversity and connect them to other social systems, government systems and just local networks. And that just naturally evolves. So some social engineering, that some communities are doing that, where they're actually inviting and setting up housing, cheap housing or whatever, and just encouraging these minority groups to settle in their communities. And that can be very confronting, because you're sort of going into sort of an unknown territory, but really just people like everybody else and with the same needs, and sometimes that's really what needs to happen.
We're the question of the go called Vital. We're a produce barn, right?
Oh, yes, I've been reading about that.
Yeah. Now, David's one of the drivers, and it's about encouraging landowners on the Bellarine to grow more produce, provide more employment, to feed more people locally. And again, it's about bringing the community together for a common cause. Is it food security? Of course, it's food security. This is action rather than words, and it's working. Last night, I'll just rattle on for a second. Last night, the producers brought in between 5 and 7 o'clock a range of produce that you wouldn't believe is grown in the Bellarine. It's absolutely sensational. It's a cash. I know the government won't like it, but somehow or other we've got to come to grips with that. But, God, it's working well.
Yeah, it's getting people out and meeting and talking and
Absolutely.
changing ideas.
I think
Connections.
and it goes back to, in a sense, not so much what is the vision for the place, but what are the natural attributes that you have here. And every organisation, every municipality, every town has its own distinct features, and I know you've been working hard on that, but it struck me that again, I don't think you should shy away from happiness. You know, it might feel soft and fuzzy to some. For me, it feels actually very powerful if you want to be serious about it. And it also occurred to me when I was reading the other thing that, you know, the Bellarine Peninsula is noted by its coastal villages. In fact, I'm going to tell you a very quick story. I know it's after 10, but 2011 was a manic year for Henry and I. I gave 250 speeches and constantly.
I was constantly ironing shirts.
Constantly on the road.
Getting stains out of
We
pants.
went out, and there were 2 or 3 times where we just needed to escape. So even in the morning to Peninsula, we walked down the street, you know, and we got on our yacht, and we sailed 17 kilometres over to Bellarine. We were not lost in the Civilians pub.
I was telling people about that.
No one knew us.
That'd be
And
great.
There he was in the paper.
Bellarine during 2011, on 2 or 3 occasions, was an absolute godsend to us. Just fabulous.
The real essence of it is that marine open space. Marine open space, you know, there's not only a tranquility, but there's an anonymity that.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, I love the idea that the bar is so obvious because you're the inland town, you know, and you're the centre. Yeah. And I'm not here to invent what you're good at, you know that. But there are things that, you know, in the years to come, Drysdale will excel at. That's we'll work out what they are. That's the secret.